Test. You give me a dance. Yeah, I haven't called it.
I just want to go. Oh.
Hi everyone, welcome to Pre-Octos of Novice 2014. Congrats to both teams for making it this far. On site government, we have MCKK Passion, and on site op, we have KYS Cunning Stunts. Judging with me, Amelia the Philippines, Leonard, and Izan. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the Prime Minister to open the debate.
Testing? Yeah, why not? Welcome everyone to the pre-octos of this tournament, and also to the live audience on the internet down there. So now, this is what I'm gonna do. First of all, I'm gonna state the stance of side government. We believe that we want to pardon whistleblowers through a referendum simply because it's for the best interest of society. So now, first of all, I will explain to you what are the certain terms in this debate that needs to be defined with. First of all, pardon, which means that the society found these whistleblowers as not guilty or as not guilty. And the second, whistleblowers as people who expose the secrets that involve secrets of the government that correlates with the society. And then thirdly, referendum, which is people coming together and then voting and also discussing in determining whether the policy is passed or not. In this case, whether whistleblowers should be pardoned or not. Those are the definitions of the debate. Next is the problems. We see there are two problems in this debate. First of all, on how the government's opinion is biased, because you see that the government has always wanted to be secretive towards the matter they have been doing, not in terms of society, in terms of society, and also in terms of military, in any kind of issue. Therefore, when the government's opinion is biased, when they just because they keep thinking that secrecy is very important without even any analysis whether secrecy should be there or not, we believe that the whistleblowers didn't have a chance to appeal to the government whether they are correct or not. Hence, there will be instant lockup or instant punishment placed upon these whistleblowers in the first place. Second problem, which is how the right of these whistleblowers to appeal is constricted, on how the process about how these whistleblowers are condemned, are punished without even proper justification is because it shows two. First of all, how it is not a democratic process because you're not hearing out towards these whistleblowers in the first place, and the second, on how it is not respecting the due process in which you are supposed to respect about their right to appeal. So now, done with that, next is the mechanism of this debate. We believe that how the referendum should be done is basically is a parallel to the jury system. How is that so? First of all, on how that there will be material available for the public to analyze, which is the material coming from the government on how they want to support their case, and also from the whistleblower themselves on how they are going to support their case. Then there will be a period of time which is suitable for these people to analyze and also to analyze about what the material they had done. Another reason why they should be given the time, because it is a period where society can understand the consequences of their voting, because they understand the pros and cons, what happened towards the state of the country, what happens to the government. They will understand that to that way the mechanism. Now, moving on towards the argumentations of side government. But before that, any questions from side opposition?
Sir,
yes.
when you say the government's opinions are biased, you contradict yourself by saying that this information that the public will evaluate is.
Yes, exactly. Actually, that's part of the mechanism. But the thing is, it is also from the whistleblower themselves. The reason I'm saying that is because people can analyze whether the government's claim is true, whether whistleblower's claims is true. That's part of the mechanism for people to analyze. All right. So now moving on to the first point of argumentation, which is how it is a more democratic process. First of all, I explain to you what is due process in the first place. Due process has three phases. First of all, where you catch the criminal for their offense. Second, on how you put it into the court, where these whistleblowers can appeal towards their crime. And then finally, whether they will serve jail time or any kind of punishment, or they'll be free to go to the public. That's the due process. But the thing is, in status quo, what will happen is that status quo does not respect the second process, which is during the court, where they do not respect where the government restricts the right of these whistleblowers to appeal to the government about how the government has been contradictory towards their own principles, which is to be fair to society. Because you see, about how the government has not been unfair to society has been shown towards the whistleblowers as claimed by the society themselves. For example, they had covertly run military plans, military development with an exorbitant amount of exorbitant use of the taxpayers' money. That's one of the issues that relates to society, because how that the government is exorbitantly use the amount of money, the taxpayers' money. So now, this is what will happen if the society were to vote for the pardoning of these whistleblowers. We believe that society themselves are more neutral. How is that so? Because they are not the ones directly afflicted towards this kind of matter. But more importantly, on how they have a better judgment by the government's claim on how secrecy will actually harm the society or not. Because secrecy is what claimed by the government as being very reprehensible. That secrecy is very important. But now, because society themselves are inflicted because society themselves are related to this kind of matter on how they see the exposing of the secrets of the government does bring harms or not. This how the society can make a justified analysis onto the matter, because they can analyze the harms of it, and also they can analyze the claims formed by the government and also formed by the whistleblowers. All right. So now, done with that point. Before moving on to the final argument, yes.
Tell me what are the harms of not having a public referendum to begin with, but letting this problem be settled by court, which is also neutral.
Here.
Look, I'm gonna explain. Right. So now, this is the second point of argumentation, which is government responsibility. You see on how the government should on how this policy will relate towards the government's responsibility in catering towards the people. First situation on how when whistleblowers are pardoned by the society. Here's the first thing that will happen. Government will be more responsible towards their own actions. How is that so? Because now that the secrets are out, that shows how the government has been very judgmental, unfair to a society. Hence, it shows that government has the right, has a need to be better in the future on how they should be more responsible in using the taxpayers' money and such. Because they want to protect, and also they want to protect their honor as a government themselves on how they have the right to protect the society, to do the betterment of society. And then second level, even if the government doesn't, we believe that now the society are not informed of what type of government they are settling with, because now they have a more informed choice on now how they want to vote, for a better government in the first place. If the current government doesn't change, then propose a better government in the future. Now, second situation on how that these whistleblowers are not pardoned. You see on how now society will not support the government because of how the government had justified the claim. It's that secrecy is more important. Thus, prove that the society's claim on how secrecy is important has failed. It will make a mutual understanding between society and also the government on how that society should respect the secrecy of the government, because it will lead to more harms. All right, and in the harms of such. For example, if the military plans were to be exposed, they have seen about how with the military plan exposed, it can be used against the government. That's the kind of harm that can exist under status quo, which is what you requested just now. With that, under the stance on how it is the best interest of society, I will let you end my speech. Thank you.
We agree with the problems that Sai government has brought up on how whistleblowers are not given a fair chance to speak of what the crimes that they have done, to get a chance to defend themselves, right? And this is what we're trying to solve, and we will solve this not by giving the public this right to choose whether to pardon them or not. We tell you we give this right to the courts to decide whether they want to pardon these people or not. We tell you what is the case brought up by opposition side today, right? Our mechanism is that we're going to let these courts decide whether or not these whistleblowers should be pardoned. First of all, courts are neutral parties, and they're able to evaluate based on the facts that they have given, right? Because based on their own characterization on how government's opinions are biased, we agree with that. This is why we let the courts do it, because they are a neutral party and they are able to evaluate this information better than the public, right? And we tell you how there's a potential for abuse among the public when the government can manipulate the media to manipulate the people to vote for whatever the government wants, right? And we tell you that when when the government side tells you these people do this without proper jurisdiction, this is why it is important to let courts make the decision instead of allowing the public, who they assume to be able to evaluate the information given to them, who assume are rational, to take the information and actually look at it, right? And we tell you how courts are responsible when it comes to dealing with cases like this, and this is why courts should be in charge, right? And they tell you how they give them a period of time to understand what this case is really about, which is a main assumption, right? They assume that these people would actually want to take this information to evaluate them. And they also fail to prove to you how an external influence will not come and influence their choices, rather whether they want to pardon them or not, right? And this will be further proven in my second point. But first of all, what is our stance today? We want to uphold justice. We want to let these whistleblowers have a chance to defend themselves, whether whatever they did was for the betterment of society or not. And this is where we put the society's best interest into hand, because when the courts decide, they know best about what society needs, and they know they have the most experience, right? What do we agree? We agree that we want a fair hearing, a fair chance for these whistleblowers to be able to defend the courts. What's the problem with government side here, right? They feel their whole case had many harms when they said that we let the people choose because it is an unfair medium and where it is susceptible to outside influence. Because we tell you that there is a media and the government is in control of the media, and this is when it is very problematic, because the government still gets a chance to influence whatever these people are going to choose, right? What we're going to do, let me analyze our case on two perspectives. First of all, on small whistleblowing cases, right? When these minor cases happen, we tell you that when these whistleblowers and corporations, we bring this to the state court. When it's big issues, like for example, Edward Snowden, Bradley Manning versus the government, we bring this to the ICJ, where evaluate and tell and to be able to make the decision whether they want to pardon these people or not. Why do we choose these two different courts? Because we believe that there is the difference between the degree of cases a period of time where they'll be able to evaluate the situation. We tell you when they give the period of time, it is more susceptible to government influencing these people. The government can influence these people within this period of time. This is why this is very problematic. Second of all, it is open to advertisements and outside influence. When the government can use advertisements, for example, when the government uses the news, when the government uses for example, to expose and exacerbate the whole situation. And we tell you this is very problematic, right? Because International Court of Justice evaluates both gives these whistleblowers a fair trial, a fair hearing, as well as evaluating what the government say, so they're able to make a better choice, right? And they fail to characterize to you who exactly are individuals who expose state or corporation secrets because they believe it is the best for society. But at the end of the day, whether it was best for society or not, it is up to the court to decide, and this is fair. In most cases, due to corruption and abuse of power and etc., we tell you that that when we allow people to have the say to people to vote this, right? We tell you that corporations can manipulate the public by giving them special promotions or buying their votes, buying them out to vote for them. What's the burden that has to be proven by government is the best. What are the harms if we don't have a referendum in the first place and we let the courts decide, which they fail to explain, to Ben on his POI, right? So what is our burden to prove to you today? We are going to prove to you how ours is the best solution and how referendums won't solve the problem, it will further exacerbate it. My points will be based on why the process works and why it is the best solution, right? Second of all, I will tell you on how while Ben will tell you about the nature of whistleblowers itself, why public referendums will not work and will further exacerbate the situation, right? First of all, and let us look at a few characterizations on what courts are. Courts are neutral parties that work to resolve civil cases because they are neutral. They evaluate both the information given by the whistleblowers and also the corporations or governments involved, right? We tell you that neutrality is important. Why? Because in cases like Edward Snowden and Bradley Manning, where the information is leaked, there is a process within the court where there is a judge and jury who will evaluate the information given to them, where it is based on facts, instead of allowing the public to be manipulated by the government, to be manipulated by the media, where they are not able to make an informed or rational choice. Right? The judge and jury will then. These whistleblowers are given a fair chance to speak, given a hearing, and a fair chance to defend themselves, and then the judge and jury decides whether to pardon them or not. The public should not have the right to vote on the fate of these whistleblowers. Why? Because we have already proven to you how the government is in control of the media. The government can take the media and use it to manipulate the people by exacerbating the crimes that these whistleblowers have done, therefore buying over their votes. Right? When it comes to the public is vulnerable, which they fail to characterize to you. Even if the public was rational and and will actually evaluate the situations that were given to them on these facts, right? We tell you that they're still not able to make an informed choice because it is only a minority of these cases where the majority will be more susceptible to the information given through the media, will be more susceptible to what they want to believe in, right? And we tell you that the public is vulnerable and they are very susceptible to these kind of information, right? We tell you that this is very problematic because when in Snowden and Bradley Manning's case, when they inflict these kind of harms, governments can use the public when it comes to referendums, and they can buy off their votes. How it leaves a less possibility of abuse, because the whole world versus one person where they can use their power, and the possibility of unfairness is mitigated within our case because the courts evaluate the situations at hand and they give the best solution.
Thank you for your opposition to that speech. Now I'd like to invite Deputy Prime Minister.
I don't know why the KYS team didn't want to actually give me a chance. They want to say, right? From my perspective, they've got the debate today totally wrong, right? What they want to say, first speaker came out to say, we say that the courts are neutral, courts are able to decide, and within a judge or a jury system, everything is to make sure that there is a form of neutrality, and where as long as it is within a court, there is going to form a form of neutrality. She said that it's not going to be neutral. She said the whole point of whether neutrality is going to happen or not, we say we want this issue regardless. But let's look at the first issue we want to talk about. In which side is it more neutral? From the characterization of side of government, we tell you this: when the government has direct control towards this court, where the judge sitting there knows that his job might be thrown off because he does not support the government, that's more likely to form a form of unneutrality within a case. And in those cases, their judge might be more biased in this kind of circumstances. Moreover, if you talk about how the government can use media as a form of condemnation, we tell you it's going to be worse in status quo under your paradigm when the government loses. Therefore, it's going to be a condemnation towards the judge itself. When it's a direct condemnation towards the judge, therefore the entire system is now looked as though it is flawed. But if you look at our case, at least our case is a form of check and balance system, is even if it's going to be a public condemnation when the government loses, at least the now shared responsibility is more justified because we have more people within the jury system to begin with. Under our case, we tell you we're more neutral within these circumstances. Sit down, I won't take a POI yet. Now, let's move on. Secondly, they told you about this. There are circumstances where the information will only be biased of the side of government, and that side of government, we tell you on the flip side, they didn't even negate on this argumentation how we talked to you about the benefits of the scenario. At least from our side, if the society was to not vote for the government, we tell you the benefits of how the government can improve themselves and the society can improve itself from those kind of information. At least now we see that the society can actually evaluate this kind of information, but from them, they're blocking society from trying to evaluate this information. And we tell you that's where you harm the right of an individual to try and find out
to find this kind of information, which directly harms the individual. Especially when we characterize the debate to be how this information, how these crimes are against public morality, how it's against how these crimes are also sensitive towards the society. That's going to be problematic under their case. And if it's even worse under their paradigm when they wanted to talk about the ICJ, right? A party within these circumstances. The ICJ, especially when the government rules and complies to the ICJ, this is where it becomes more biased in the situation where the society has no say in this in this situation. We say that within these circumstances, the opposition is not doing anything in order for you to have a society become a more democratic vote, right? Because at the end of the day, it leads to that how this vote is going to be value judged and how the society receives the impact. We tell you that firstly, it's very important for society to know this kind of information, but on your side, you don't allow society to kind of know the information more often than not. You're not trying to tackle the real problem of today, right? Secondly, you're talking about people are generally able to be influenced by these kind of things, influenced by public media, influenced by society to be coerced to vote the government. We tell you this is that's not going to happen because we allow the period of time. Moreover, we allow society to judge and vote. Right? Society does not just go and take every information on the media and use it. Right? We tell you that people are smart enough to actually evaluate this kind of information to begin with. But even if the society is coerced towards that vote, we tell you that the benefit towards it is of support towards the government. But moreover, we tell you at least the whistleblower has a chance to off due process in order to negate that idea for the court, right? Because in the end of the day, it's going to be neutral, it's going to be the court, and both sides get the way for them to talk. Why they should win towards that kind of issue, why these people should in the end of the day take to the extent why they should win that kind of issue. Before that, yes.
In the sense that you also consider to the fact that these governments are biased and they monopolize the media, they monopolize this information and they have a bigger representation. How can that actually provide a fairer platform?
A debate on this. That is a very unfair platform when you only have the government being biased in this kind of situation. Right now, within those circumstances, we don't see the whistleblower having the ability to do the same. At least within those circumstances, especially when the judge is on your side, on the side of the government, that's where we feel it's very problematic. But at least on our cases, we tell you it's going to be a jury system where the society can then evaluate both circumstances. And we told you the benefits. I don't like to repeat myself, but I have to do it anyway. So what will I be talking about, right? Firstly, I'll talk about how there is a form of rights towards these people to appeal in the first place. But secondly, I'll talk to you about how is the message that's going to be sent towards the society. Firstly, how I talk about this the information to be rights of the information of society. We tell you that this information, if we're looking on the side of opposition, we don't see that this kind of information going to be revealed to the society. And society will don't have a form of closure towards this idea because in the day they don't know. They don't have the evaluation process of that idea. So if the government loses that pardon, they won't put it on mass media. But if the government wins that pardon, only then they will put it. And this is a in that form. But at least now, when we have our proposal, when the society is then evaluating, they can know and judge whether this information is right or wrong. Within that, we tell you there is a form of closure. To what extent can the society know and the justification of why this actually happens in another day? Why the whistleblower might win in that context? But us is how many whistleblowers were let free by a court system within status quo. We don't see that actually happening, right? We tell you it's only happening under our cases. But right now, what's the message that's going to be sent to society? The message that's going to be sent to society is that the government tries to acknowledge you as a person, an individual in society as important, especially in democratic issues. We try to involve you as much in this in order for you to evaluate, especially when it's a public interest kind of crime. Therefore, we tell you whether you should judge an individual, whether they are supporting the government, whether they are harming the government. So if the society does not vote to pardon, does not vote for the government, it shows that this is no longer a crime against society that will set the precedence for the society in order to evaluate another day. So for that, all those reasons, as long as we improve and try to acknowledge society in another day, we tell you we're doing for the best interest of society.
ladies and gentlemen, in the beginning of much, right? Because this was their mechanism. Firstly, that the material will be given to these people to evaluate from both parties, meaning that the society, these people, society people like me at home can evaluate material from the whistleblower and also material from the government. Now, I have three responses to this. Firstly, this assumption coming from their side that everyone's society is hardworking enough to read whatever this whistleblower has to say to begin with, but then other courts on the courts on the other hand will evaluate this specifically, something that they are paid to do, right? But not the society unpaid to do it. Evaluating reasons and deciding jurisdictions cannot be done over a small period of time. It's done under a long time, right? So the amount of having each party to concentrate on this might take a lot of years. We can take a look at Oscar Pistorius case, which is going on for how long? So bored of reading it already, right? Believe that this is a long time, and believe that you cannot. And the question is here: can you sustain the concentration on society in actually hearing and making better judgments to begin with, right? Because they cannot make this kind of better judgment to begin with. But even if they were to make judgment, it will be based on their first principle, on what they first thought of it, without listening to anything of the said. But secondly, on their stance, on how it's the best interest of society. What are you talking about if the best interest of society if you're not taking whistleblowers at hand? Because whistleblowers are also part of society. You're not upholding the rights of fairness, because you only talk on your first argumentation, which is how society is neutral. Now, I'll prove to you how society is neutral in my next rebuttal, and will never be affected or influenced by these kinds of case and problems. I've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. Okay, just listen and count. Okay, first, what are you talking about, MCKK? You cannot be so simplistic in these kinds of cases, right? Because society will always be biased compared to the courts. Society will always sit down, do what they think, and what they think is right and how they do it for them, right? Because secondly, this you already considered that these problems correlate with them, right? Meaning that now, whether they are benefited or whether they are harmed, they will always go to the side which damages them more or which supports them more, right? Because this is the kind of principle that society goes on. It is never neutral. But then thirdly, because that courts, where my prime leader of opposition said that courts are neutral, right? That it takes facts, like not influence. I give you an example. If we believe that Najib did something stupid, right? Or how we believe that affects us as people, like us, we want to say to propose too much, it influences us that much and it harms us that much, right? But even though in courts they would then listen, but in courts, right, these judges or these juries would then listen to what Najib has to say, even if he's not smart in English or whatever. Sit down, right? Believe that then these types of courts will have the core hard facts where they can evaluate decisions, where these people who actually has a degree and has specific kinds of or specifications or mastering in this field itself. But then next, on how they said that governments are not biased, right? And then they themselves can bribe these judges and make them do all these things, right? If you actually read about a constitution of state, you understand there are 3 types of organs of state, whereby the execution can never influence the jurisdiction. This is jurisdiction. The judicial people have always a power over the execution, and they'll never listen to these execution people, right? You know, that's false to begin with, and the ICJ stands by themselves. But then lastly, on a funny thing that they said and come out from the previous people before me, there's the ICJ itself will be affected. Bro, how can the ICJ be affected lah? Come on, this is the International Courts of Justice. If this problem happened in Malaysia, are you saying that Najib owns the ICJ, right? This is false. Any points of clarification?
Right now, you wanted to say that your case involves the court, the judge and the jury. If
Yeah,
the jury is
yeah.
also society, under your case, how is it mutually exclusive that the harms of society being influenced, not that?
Okay. If this debate is in America, then yes, they will be slightly affected, but not compared to everyone in society, where you have a proportionate amount in the jury, which is not as much as society, right? We can negate the harm. We cannot absolutely destroy this type of biasness, but we can negate it as much as we can, because we need fairness in that cases. But you talk about sit down, but in Malaysia or in Africa, right, there's no jury. There's only one head judge. But moving on to my first argumentation, which is fairness towards these whistleblowers, right? Proper medium to begin with to speak, right? Because more often not, we believe that these people don't have a proper medium to speak. For example, you take a look at Edward Snowden, right? We don't have a proper media to portray and to tell what he's actually done, right? But
is portrayed to the media. We believe that these victims or these whistleblowers can, or these corporations can influence the media itself, and also this type, and also this is not a sufficient medium enough because it's through cam, right? We believe that in courts itself there are check and balance system, there are cross examinations which actually prove the facts that what these parties are saying. When you go in courts, when you have society doing this, you have no these kinds of check and balances like examinations to begin with, because it's such a long period of time and just to sustain it for everybody in society. But next, on second level, on how would the public influence the justice of a whistleblower? Three reasons, right? Firstly, because public now don't have the proper facts or the concrete evidence, the real evidence. Sit down, I know what you're going to say, talk about material, giving them, not enough, okay, not sufficient. Then in these problems of case, because both parties might try to pull legs and both parties might try to tell lies, right? But second, in a court, there's always a check, I told you, there's always a check and balance system which is crazily based on cold hard facts, right? And then thirdly, the public might have a certain relationship with this side, with either party, meaning that they might support one party even more, or they might support another party even more, like what my Eloho has said. But on the last level, right, in forms of punishment, can the public or these parties give proportionate punishments, right? Because not all whistleblowers are bad, like a student, like they do, or maybe they're bad or not bad, or they do something that's crazy wrong. There are whistleblowers that only cause a substantial amount of harm, right? Because you're saying that, look, if it's considered wrong, you're thrown to jail right away, and that was your mechanism. We believe that society doesn't have the power to get and to give proportionate punishments. But then lastly, why is whistleblowers have to give this fairness, right? Firstly, now the the likes of these people who hate him and the people who love him are now in the hands of society. His whole life, or what's going to happen to him next, is influenced by society, and society is never neutral, and society is always biased. We believe that these whistleblowers are also part of society, meaning that they also have the basic human rights of justice, meaning that they always have to be fair, because now you have to understand that society is playing with his life. We're not letting society to play with his life. We're letting the courts to make a better jurisdiction for what you are doing.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, there has been a huge contradiction coming from the side government. First thing first, the opposition said that they want a jury system. They already consider the fact that jury is neutral. Therefore, firstly, this means that they are supporting our case. We are only upholding neutrality. So, because of that, we are also upholding neutrality. Therefore, that point goes on our side. But then, on the first issue to debate on how which side is more neutral or from the best check and balance, we tell you that the court, they tell you that the court is the best medium and representation of the society in making decision, in which they also want to let these whistleblowers to defend themselves. We tell you this. My second speaker already told you how the court are controlled by the governments and how judges will be biased because of the decision that the judges make to punish with the decision to punish whistleblowers will be perceived as decision that is directly against the government in the first place. That's how the judges are going to bias. But furthermore, the fact that the government are controlling the court, meaning that these
whistleblowers will be more likely to be punished. Because why? We have two reasons here. First thing first, these whistleblowers are exposing secret directly affecting the government and the society, meaning that all the secret leaked by the whistleblowers are undermining the government credibility. For example, government conspiracy. Secondly, they have every interest in the status quo to punish these whistleblowers, and they take all the chance they can have. No matter how hard these whistleblowers defend themselves, they will be to harm. First thing first, the government will find every possible evidence and every best lawyers to negate what the whistleblowers appeal to the court. Everything that the whistleblowers say to defend himself. Secondly, any lawyers or any bodies who want to protect the whistleblowers will be perceived by the government as be directly against the government, and therefore the government will threaten these bodies who want to protect the whistleblowers. But in contrary, we tell you how our side in which by making referendum, we uphold neutrality. We already tell you how the society make the best informed choice by few reasons. Firstly, crime in the law are defined as crimes against society. If the society define it as not a crime, it is not a crime. Is it a crime? It is a crime. And secondly, it will also form a closure, because the society wants to demand information from the whistleblowers and the government. Therefore, there will be, like my second speaker and my first speaker already told you, there will be a period between the secret leakage and the referendum where all these forces, the whistleblowers and the government, will try their best to succeed in explaining what the truth. The government will try their best to tell the society the truth in order to garner support, and the whistleblowers will tell all the government secrets in order to protect themselves. But before that, any PI?
Yes.
Yes.
When you said that these things done by whistleblowers damage and affect the government, and the government will do whatever to prove them wrong, are you then saying that everything the whistleblower does is wrong, right? So just throw them in jail, don't have a public referendum.
Again?
Move on.
Okay, sorry. Okay. On the second issue, on which side uphold justice and form a better form of discourse, we already tell you how the society, because of the discourse that happened, because of the period between the secret leakage and the referendum, the society will have a better informed knowledge, because all the other part because on the period of knowledge, period of time, all these forces will try their best to convince society, in which because of this, the society will have an informed form of informed knowledge on how to vote, to pardon the whistleblowers or to punish the whistleblowers. But before that, yes.
Sir, prove to us how within that period of time the government will not use the media to manipulate the society to make a choice based on what they want.
But they have the media in the side, but the whistleblowers also have the internet in the side, the Wi-Fi. These people can also gain access to both parties, in which to have the form of justification on which side is more correct in this sense. But my first speaker already told you how referendum is a form of democratic process, in which we uphold democracy in that sense, in which form, because the secret leaked by these whistleblowers are directly affecting the government, then the government of city, because the secret are leaked in the first place, they need to have an extra precaution. But my first speaker already tell you, but even if the government doesn't change, the society also have informed choice in which the government is bad or wrong, and they will have an informed choice to determine which government is better in the next election. My first speaker already tell you how it will respect due process on how the period where society can understand the government and whistleblower is true, which is true and which is not. Now it will also. Yes.
Okay, if there is no public referendum to begin with, and it's only done by courts, again, what are the harms that will happen?
From the first speaker to the second speaker, we already tell you the direct harm of what will happen if the court decide. We tell you how the government can influence the court on how this whistleblower will have no form of defense mechanism to protect himself. Because why? Because the government
try all the medium available to go against whistleblower, and how other factor or other parties that try to defend these whistleblowers will be harmed in the process. But secondly, this shows that which side from a better form of justice. We tell you that our side from a better form of justice, because why? Our side, the society is more neutral because they have more informed choice. They have more informed choice because of the discourse that happened between the government and between the society and the information that they get to justify themselves. But with that, we as the side government want to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank the government invite opposition.
Before I came in this room, Imran from the government side promised me that we'd have a fun debate. And I'm thanking him today, right now, for giving me that chance to have a fun time telling you why government side should lose today's debate. But before I tell you why, let me first tell you how my speech is going to be carried out. First of all, I'm going to point out the obvious flaws coming from government side. Then I will point out the issues, I will analyze the issues from today's debate. As well as I will summarize what today's debate is all about. So moving on to the first point, how the government side is actually flawed. So we tell you that from the very get-go, the government side got the whole debate wrong. They were talking about the aftermath, if whistleblowers are pardoned or not. They were talking about the benefits of debate today is about the process. What is debate actually about? How does referendum actually promote fairness, and what's the harms if courts do it? Something they can barely touched upon in today's debate. Second, their stance itself was the best interest of society. Then we asked them, these whistleblowers are also part of society, someone who also pay tax, someone whom you should also think about their best interest. But their whole case was telling about how the governments were biased, but we're fine with that. They were also very dismissive on all of our laws and all of our points on how we should actually protect these whistleblowers in the first place. Shame. Then they had a big, huge contradiction on their side, ladies and gentlemen. Their problem from the get-go was how these governments were biased and monopolized almost everything in the country, right? But then they suddenly talked about how it's suddenly fair for the public to make decisions based on information given by government and whistleblowers. We tell you that this is not fair because they consider from the very get-go that government does monopolize the country. The government does have a hold on what the people think and does have the upper hand. So tell us, how is it fair then? Something they did not prove as well. And then they did not understand opposition's case, ladies and gentlemen. From the get-go, my leader of opposition told you that there are two kinds of one, something that has something to do the secrets that actually affects big corporations, and second, the secrets that actually affect states. We told you already how these secrets that actually affect corporations would be handled by state courts, while secrets that actually has something to do with handled by the IJC, ladies and gentlemen. So the harm that they talked about, that they threw at us about how courts are not neutral, false. Because how can you say that the government has anything to do in the IJC in the first place? It's something like the ICC as well. Are you then saying the ICC is also has something to do with the government, linked somehow with the government? Dismiss it down. Then moving on to my first issue, which proposal actually results in, but before that, I have three issues in today's debate. The first is which proposal actually result in a fairer platform. The second is actually is the benefits that they brought up, and the third is the harms that they never touched upon. But first, let's in a fairer platform. The government side, coming from government side, they told you that governments are biased, but hey, we allow them to prepare materials to inform the public anyway. Then we tell you there's a form of brainwash in the first place. How? Because they have a bigger sense of representation. How is this actually educating the public about the real issue when you allow the government to actually make this kinds of when you allow the government to actually use their full power to monopolize to use your power to can monopolize the public to actually win that particular case in the first place? How does the government has power on us? We tell the government has lots of the government controls the media in the first place. How government can actually pay you and bribe you. How the government has lots of agencies and has lots of people around you that are actually working for the government. So if you're working under the government, for example, you're a doctor in a government hospital, what will happen then is they're going to tell you, you work for me, so you better vote for me. These are the kinds of harms that we tell you occur when you follow with the government side, because they tell you it's perfectly fine because it's sign of perfectly fine. But we tell you, how then are you educating the public in the first place, ladies and gentlemen? Then we question. Coming from the government side, they were totally fine with going with public. But we tell you, why isn't public going to give a fair chance towards these whistleblowers in the first place? I have two analysis to this. Number one, how there's an outside influence. Why? Because we tell them the nature of society in the first place is that they want instant gratification. This government can actually offer them money right then and there, can actually threaten them right then and there. Because of this, the probability of them going with that government is huge, ladies and gentlemen. But then again, we take to you, how about even rational government, even rational public can also not be fully informed because they're monopolized by the government. Don't you ever think about how these whistleblowers will only have a small chance to actually represent themselves and tell the public about the real issue in today's debate, right? They cannot. Therefore, we tell you that the public cannot be a form of fair discourse. But then we tell you about why courts are bad to discourse. We tell because, number one, courts are based on hardcore facts. They don't have any emotional ties or any ties included towards these big corporations or these states in the first place, right, ladies and gentlemen? We tell there's a less probability of outside influence. Fine, coming from government side, they told you about how juries can sometimes be excluded, how they sometimes can be better lawyers. Fine, we tell you this, these are basket cases. Even then, even individuals are better off handled than when you take into account a whole society, right, ladies and gentlemen? Then they talked about how then they actually brought up that government side, in other words, are saying that society, how given biased education and has less knowledge when it comes to legal law matters, are better juries. We question why? Because we're talking about professionals, ladies and gentlemen. This, any one of you.
Now, if you're saying that society is always biased, that they have always made a wrong decision, are you also saying that our general elections are also wrong and should not be implemented?
Ladies and gentlemen, I did not say that they're always going to be wrong, but I'm telling you that I'm actually weighing down which one can actually prove to be fair. I'm telling you that courts are better because the probability of them actually getting influence are smaller. Like when you talk about moving on to the second issue, they talk about harms. The harms coming from government side. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The only harms coming is that they talked about how the rights of information towards society. We told you that the rights of information towards society also applies in our case. Why? Because it's not mutually exclusive. Even in our case, when you're handled by courts, they're also going to give society is also going to get that particular information. Society is also going to be informed on what affects them or not, ladies and gentlemen. Then they talked about how the aftermath of whether if the states lose or if the whistleblowers lose. We tell you that these are not mutually exclusive in their case. But what is mutually exclusive are the harms that we talked about from opposition side. We told you how courts are a neutral party. We talked about how it's outside influence. We talked about how fairness towards the whistleblowers, something that we talked about. Because we are more mutually exclusive, because we talked about the stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, therefore you should go with side opposition.
We've now let you but the vice speaker from the opposition then.
ladies and gentlemen, we admitted that we lost to this MCKK team in the fifth round. But we believe that today, not today, we lost to them today, that now we're going to kick their asses, and I'm going to prove to you why in my reply speech. But before that, there was a huge whip. Because he said that, because they said that governments will do whatever it takes to negate what the whistleblower did, and do whatever and influence every one of them so what the whistleblower did was wrong. Meaning that now they're telling us that whistleblowers, whatever they do, are wrong. So why would you have to have a public referendum to begin with, right? But that's not the major problem. Let's take a look at the burdens that they didn't prove today, right? There are three burdens. The burden of will there be biasness to begin with, because they gave little to no analysis on this burden. Because the only thing they talked about was that societies are unaffected and they're not influenced. They didn't tell us why and how, and that courts are always controlled by government. Now, we already told you and we responded very sufficiently and very aggressively to this. Firstly, we say that societies will indeed and are inclined to choose which party are more are benefiting them more, are principally benefiting them more, right? Meaning that, for example, in this decision of the debate, if we win, then you would then not be inclined to the adjudicators of what they say, right? Because you obviously want to win. This is type of parallel and this type of analogy that we will do, right? Because they'll be opting for the society for the party that benefits them more. But secondly, we have to understand on the argument about courts, right? You understand about the constitution of states, whereby the executive, meaning the government, the prime minister, don't have a power over the judicial community because it's the law, right? And also the judicial community has a power over the executive on their decisions. It means they can manipulate decisions and they can change the decisions of the executive. You shake your head, you should go back and read. But then on the next burden of will both parties be actually heard, and will both parties give an amount of fairness of which of their materials to be heard, right? Because because already in my speech, what the mechanism that they will be given material to judge on, we question that never answered and never engaged, even from coming from WHIP. The first question was, can you sustain the concentration of the society in actually following the case or following the trial? And secondly, will they actually read all the facts, or will they actually hear them out, right? Because this type of things that you cannot control and you cannot assume that it will happen. It's an absolute. Yes, there might be some people who will do it, but you take a look at courts, right? Where courts are obliged and they have to look at cold hard facts, where they have to evaluate, where they have to make rational decisions based on what both parties said, where they hear both parties out, where they evaluate, giving equality and fairness to both of them, regardless of who's doing something wrong. But then lastly, on the issue of the interest society, where they said it will be interest society because it affects these people. We believe that if it affects these people, yes, it means that, but it also propagates them to opt for the party having them more. But then again, you're not giving much of a right to these whistleblowers. To give out and to give them to voice out their opinion, right? The medium that you're giving is not sufficient enough. The medium that we are giving is sufficient, right? And also, they dare to say that ICJ are controlled by governments. What are you talking about? But then lastly, right, they said, coming on from his POI, and that concluded their stance, right? They say that general elections will always be biased. Are you then saying that it will never be biased, right? We believe that first, that it will always be biased. And the society are never neutral and never be biased. But what we're doing is justice.
I thank the revised speaker from opposition. I would like to invite government line.
Ladies and gentlemen, we beat them once. I can tell you we can beat them again today, ladies and gentlemen. Right? What we've done to us to today's debate was for them to say that we didn't prove anything to this debate. Just their was our arguments to begin with. Let's start with what my Prime Minister told you about and what was today's debate about. We wanted to bring you a referendum where the society has a voice and to say. That's why we took the stance of best interest of society, because we wanted to include society in the evaluation process that directly harms them. And the crimes that we were talking about were crimes that directly harm the society, caused the society voted to. A democracy system, right? In these cases. But let's look at both paradigms. From their side of the house, they wanted to say that the court is neutral, go with the court 100%, judge is always okay, and the jury system is always neutral. But from our case, we tell you that the judge is always biased in a situation where they are also in the seat where the government can control and manipulate them in these circumstances, something that they didn't want to talk about. But even more, we talk to you about how there's going to form a neutrality because there is a form of a jury system to begin with. When there is a party that can actually evaluate the circumstances within the situation, something they didn't want to talk about in today's debate, ladies and gentlemen. They didn't prove to us in the end of the house how society was not affected by this kind of situations. Let's move on to the issues we have in today. Right? Firstly, the confusion from them. They say that the society is always biased. The government is always biased and try to manipulate. We tell you that what is government biased on? The government is biased in defending themselves within their case, right? And the whistleblower is biased within themselves to protect their case. But in the end of the day, what we're trying to look at is how society judge it, whether is it a crime towards society or not. Something they didn't want to talk about. The biasness in what we wanted to talk about was when the government is ruling this kind of system and the society has no say about it within how they want to have this kind of not. That's what they didn't understand, the biasness that they want to talk about. Right now, let's look at how they didn't actually solve today's debate. Right? Which side benefits society more? In the end of the day, we told you this. In our case, we best society is best won into this debate because we talked to you about how the benefit of this pardon and the benefit of not pardoning of the whistleblowers. Because at the end of the day, the benefits of not of when a pardon is given towards the whistleblower, the government can now evaluate. Government can now become better in order to what's interest of society. That's what something they. Where the society supports the government, that's why we tell you there is going to be a form of the best interest of society, because now there is a form of trust within the government and society. They didn't want to talk about this. This is all are not present within their case. That's why we told you that these are standing arguments to this debate. Something they say we wanted to bring about. But this is the inherent contradiction they made. They said that the jury system is neutral, but society is not neutral. If the jury system included of society, and how then, if our choice of making society being expanded within to evaluate this kind of process, how is that not becoming not neutral in the end of the day? This is some part of a confusion that they lost to this debate. But at the end of the day, what have we proven towards our case? We've proven to you this, right? Number one, how the society will then benefit from both cases, whether they are going to pardon or not. But secondly, how we talk to you about the message of society that's going to be sent to the end of the day. And this is so important for the evaluation of the government to lead and to become better. Something they didn't want to engage about. We told you they did have a stance to this debate. They did actually make sure that they were strong enough in order to prove why the court was not biased in status quo. That's why we went to this debate. Let's go with side of government.
Shake hands, cross the floor, and leave for dinner. Results will be announced in
Bye everyone. Bye.